I want you to imagine a secret, but, not just any secret. I want you to picture a secret so impeccably sealed that despite over half a century of relentless technological advancement, it just remains completely uncracked.
Which is incredibly rare, right? Usually when we think about mysteries from the past, we just assume time is the ultimate enemy of the unknown.
Right. We assume we'll develop better analytical tools, or we'll invent some high-definition digital enhancement, and suddenly, boom, the curtain's pulled back, the magic trick is revealed.
Yeah, because we really like our world to be solvable. It is incredibly comforting to believe human progress acts like a giant spotlight, illuminating all the dark corners.
Oh, absolutely.
We have this inherent expectation that a blurry, ambiguous piece of analog evidence from the past will inevitably be sharpened and completely demystified by the brilliant forensic tools of the future.
But then, you step into the dense, treacherous woods of Northern California. You rewind the clock to October 20th, 1967, and you look at 59 seconds of 16mm film footage. I'm talking, of course, about the infamous Patterson-Gimlin film, the Bigfoot footage. And suddenly, that entire equation, the idea that time plus technology equals the truth, it just completely shatters.
It really does.
Today, we have a massive stack of research sitting in front of us. We're talking biomechanical breakdown papers, forensic film analyses, Hollywood special effects, historical accounts, and even psychological studies on hoaxes.
That's a lot of data.
It is. And the mission of our deep dive today is to unpack the profound implications of those 59 seconds. Because, listen, this isn't just some campfire ghost story to casually debate.
No, far from it. Today's deep dive is an exploration into the very limits of modern scientific analysis. It's a direct challenge to the nature of proof itself.
Right.
I mean, how is it fundamentally possible that less than a minute of grainy, shaky film from the 1960s can completely stump modern primatologists, biomechanical engineers, and digital effects masters?
It sounds impossible.
It does. We are going to look strictly at the data of what was captured at Bluff Creek. But more importantly, we are going to examine why the endurance of this footage across the decades matters to anyone who relies on science to explain our reality.
Okay, let's unpack this by grounding ourselves in the reality of that day.
Yeah.
To understand why this footage is so unbelievably resilient against debunking, you really have to understand the exact moment the ordinary became impossible.
Setting the baseline.
Exactly. We have two men, Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin. They are riding on horseback deep in the Bluff Creek wilderness in Northern California. It's this rugged, isolated landscape full of washed-out logging roads.
Very remote.
Super remote. They're immersed in the complete normalcy of the wilderness, completely unaware of what is about to step into the clearing.
Which establishes a really crucial psychological and environmental baseline. I mean, they aren't on a soundstage with controlled lighting.
No, definitely not.
They are navigating an unpredictable topography. When you are deep in a forest like that, your brain is just wired to process the natural environment. You expect trees, streams, and local wildlife. You're operating on a baseline of natural predictability.
And the historical accounts show that's exactly what they thought they were seeing at first glance. A bear, just a normal everyday encounter in the woods. But then
the anomaly happens.
Right, because this massive animal literally stands up. It stands up and begins walking away on two legs. It turns, looks back at the camera, and just keeps walking. I want to bring up a way to visualize this for you listening. Think about it like seeing a glitch in a video game, but specifically with a physics engine.
The physics engine. Wait, break that down.
So, when you are playing a hyper-realistic video game and you see a character walking around, sometimes the programming logic just breaks. The character model is there, it has arms and legs, but the physics are wrong.
Oh, like the weight distribution is off?
Exactly. The gravity doesn't look right.
Yeah.
Your brain instantly recognizes that the core mechanics of that movement are fundamentally flawed for a human. And looking at the Patterson-Gimlin footage, it's not just the shock of a tall, hairy figure. It's that the movement itself feels like a glitch in our biological reality.
It really doesn't move like a person in a suit.
But I have to push back here because that is the default assumption, right? Couldn't it just be a guy in a costume doing an exaggerated, funny walk to sell the illusion?
Look, this raises an important question, and it is the necessary first hurdle in any analytical breakdown of this footage. It must be a person in a suit.
That's what everyone thinks.
Right. But when we rigorously analyze the biomechanical papers in our stack today, the absolute anchor of this entire mystery is the specific mechanics of the stride. It's called a compliant gait.
A compliant gait. Okay.
Yeah. When human beings walk, we basically execute a controlled forward fall. We act like a stiff-legged pendulum. We lock our knees, strike hard with our heel, and vault over our straight leg. It saves energy.
Right, our legs are essentially rigid stilts for a brief second with every step we take.
Precisely. But the figure in the 1967 film never locks its knees, not once. It walks with a bent knee, bent hip stride. Its joints act like continuous shock absorbers.
Which keeps its head incredibly level, right?
Exactly, despite the really rough terrain. If a human tries to replicate that bent knee walk, the Groucho Marx walk, as some call it, the human thigh muscles, the quadriceps, will burn out and fatigue almost immediately.
Oh, I've tried it. It hurts.
Yeah. Yet this massive creature executes the compliant gait smoothly, effortlessly, and rapidly over an uneven sandbar scattered with debris.
Which implies a musculature that is fundamentally different from a human's. But what if the guy in the suit is just an incredible athlete? Like, what if he just pushed through the thigh burn for 59 seconds?
Okay, even if we grant the superhuman endurance, we hit a wall with the anatomical proportions. Primatologists studying the film point to the intermembral index.
And that's the ratio of arm length to leg length.
Correct. Human arms are relatively short compared to our legs, but the figure in the film has an arm-to-leg ratio that falls completely outside the normal human range and is actually closer to that of an ape.
But wait, couldn't a hoaxer just build arm extensions into the suit? Put, I don't know, sticks inside the costume arms to make them look longer?
A logical workaround, sure, but the footage betrays it. When the creature swings its arms, the elbow joint bends.
Right.
If you put a human in a suit with arm extensions, their natural human elbow is going to be halfway up the costume's upper arm. The hinge point would be completely wrong.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. In the Patterson-Gimlin film, the elbow joint bends at the anatomically correct midpoint for an arm of that massive length, and the fingers flex naturally at the bottom of the swing. Furthermore, the forensic breakdown highlights a detail called a mid-tarsal break.
That's the flexibility in the foot, right?
Yes. Humans have a rigid longitudinal arch. It's an evolutionary adaptation for our stiff-legged walking. Apes, however, have a flexible foot that can bend in the middle, the mid-tarsal joint.
And they can see this on the film.
They can. When you stabilize and zoom in on the creature lifting its foot in the footage, the foot physically hinges in the middle. The heel lifts high while the front half of the foot remains flat on the ground.
It's incredible.
You cannot engineer a flexible, weight-bearing mid-tarsal break into a rubber boot in 1967. Mechanically speaking, the weight transfer, the limb proportions, and the joint articulations simply do not align with human physiology.
That is such a wild concept to wrap your head around. The costume might fool your eyes at a quick glance, but the literal physics of the movement betray the reality.
Exactly.
And look, if that anomalous compliant gait was the only weird thing about this, maybe we could just write it off today as some incredibly lucky 1 in a million optical illusion. But the true mystery is born from what happened after the footage was released.
Ah, yes. The decades of intense, unforgiving, and ultimately unsuccessful scrutiny.
Yeah, the passage of time here is staggering. Our research notes that experts have analyzed it endlessly. We're talking about Hollywood special effects legends, Disney Imagineers, digital analysts.
The best in the business.
Right. Technology has vastly improved since 1967, and yet no one has proved it's fake. And here's where it gets really interesting. No one has ever been able to recreate it perfectly.
That's the crux of it.
I look at modern cinema. We have CGI that can build entirely photorealistic universes. We can digitally resurrect deceased actors and seamlessly insert them into movies. How is it practically possible that we cannot perfectly recreate a shaky piece of analog film?
What's fascinating here is that the sheer failure of modern technology to replicate this footage isn't just a lack of success, it is actually a profound piece of data.
How so?
Well, we tend to view our modern digital tools as the ultimate arbiters of reality, but the inability to reverse engineer this footage suggests something incredibly complex about the physical mass captured on the celluloid.
Are you saying the limitations of 1967 film actually protect it from modern CGI?
It's more about organic complexity versus artificial rendering. When Hollywood experts, including people like Stan Winston, who designed the dinosaurs for Jurassic Park, looked at this, they pointed out the muscle jiggle.
The muscle jiggle?
Yeah. As the creature steps, you can see the mass of the thigh muscle shifting and rebounding under the skin and hair. There is even a visible indentation on the thigh that some analysts identify as a herniated muscle.
A physical defect on a wild animal.
Exactly. In 1967, special effects suits were made of rigid materials or just loose fur draped over padding.
Right.
The concept of creating a water-filled or gel-filled muscle suit underneath a spandex skin, which is how they fake muscle movement today, did not exist. The materials just hadn't been invented.
That's crazy.
So the fact that the most brilliant special effects artists cannot seamlessly duplicate the fluid muscle movement, the immense weight displacement causing deep footprints in the mud, and the environmental interaction captured on that raw film, it means the original event possessed a level of organic reality that resists artificial manufacturing.
It's like trying to forge a masterpiece painting, you know. You might have better modern synthetic paints and digital color matching tools, but you can't perfectly replicate the exact organic pressure of the original artist's brushstroke.
That's a great analogy.
The modern tools actually highlight the unique, irreproducible reality of the original. So if technology has completely failed to debunk the footage, and digital or practical recreation is a dead end, our deep dive has to shift direction. We have to move away from the biomechanics and the celluloid and look at human nature.
Yes, we have to look at the psychology of secrets.
Right.
Which is invariably the most fragile component of any long-standing conspiracy or hoax. Humans are notoriously bad at keeping secrets, especially ones that garner global attention, scrutiny, and potential financial reward.
That brings us to the ultimate psychological argument highlighted in the historical accounts. The logic is simple, but incredibly heavy. If it was fake, someone would have undeniably exposed it by now.
It's the classic skeptics argument.
But I really want to challenge this premise. I don't think it's that simple. Look at history. We kept the Manhattan Project secret for a very long time, with thousands of people involved. The Piltdown Man hoax, where someone buried fake human ancestor bones, fooled the top scientists in the world for 40 years before it was exposed.
True.
People can keep secrets. So is the sheer passage of time without a definitive confession actual proof that the footage is real? Or does it just mean Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin were incredibly disciplined and took the secret to their graves?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of human sociology, the Manhattan Project was enforced by the United States military under the threat of treason during a world war.
Fair point.
And the Piltdown Man was a static object hidden in a drawer protected by academic elitism. The Patterson-Gimlin film is entirely different.
Because of the logistics.
Exactly. Think about the logistics a hoax of this magnitude would require in 1967. Patterson and Gimlin were not wealthy, well-connected Hollywood insiders. They were working-class cowboys. To fake this, they would need a network.
Right, it's not a two-man job.
They would require master costume designers, fabricators, custom material sourcing, and someone to perfectly choreograph an anatomically impossible walk.
But what about Bob Hieronymus? For anyone listening who doesn't know, he's the man who came forward decades later claiming he was the guy wearing the suit for Patterson. Doesn't that shatter the nobody talked argument?
It's an essential piece of the history, definitely. But when forensic analysts put Hieronymus's claim to the test, the physics just didn't align.
How so?
Hieronymus is roughly 6 feet tall. The photogrammetry of the film, which is measuring the creature against the known sizes of the trees and the distance to the camera, places the figure much taller, with an estimated weight pushing upwards of 500 pounds.
Wow, so he's way too small.
Way too small. Furthermore, when they mapped Hieronymus's proportions to the creature, his eye level didn't match the creature's eye level, his shoulders were far too narrow, and his biomechanics couldn't match the compliant beat. People have claimed to be in the suit, yes, but none of their stories align with the hard mathematical data on the film.
So it's not just about a lack of confession. It's about a lack of a verifiable confession, a confession that actually holds up to the physical evidence.
Exactly. Inevitably, human nature dictates that in a true hoax, the evidence leaks. Someone produces the suit, someone produces the receipts for the custom fur, someone provides a photograph of the rehearsal.
But we have none of that.
None. The absolute lack of any supporting physical evidence of a hoax being manufactured creates a massive logical void. In the absence of the predictable human behavior that unravels conspiracies, we are forced to seriously consider the alternative.
The longer it goes on.
Right. The longer the silence lasts and the more rigorous our technology becomes without finding a zipper or a seam, the more mathematically improbable a fabricated event becomes.
We are effectively backed into a corner here. If we follow this logic, that a human conspiracy engineered by two broke cowboys would have inevitably fractured and been exposed by now. And we combine that with the fact that our most advanced biomechanical science and special effects technology cannot debunk the physical movement.
We are left staring at a very uncomfortable reality.
Yeah.
It forces a paradigm shift. We have to move from asking, how did they fake it, to asking, what does it actually mean if they didn't?
And this is where the implications of the research take a profoundly humbling turn. Because if that footage is real, it means something was out there. An uncatalogued, massive bipedal primate was navigating the logging roads of Northern California.
Right in our backyard.
So what does this all mean? Imagine walking your dog in those woods or taking a camping trip and realizing that there's an entirely undocumented branch of the primate family tree, breathing, moving, and thriving in the dense timber of the Pacific Northwest, completely defying decades of human scientific categorization.
It shatters our sense of environmental dominance.
Totally.
It taps into a very ancient tension. Our modern society is built on the comforting illusion that humanity has thoroughly cataloged and conquered the natural world. We believe our satellite imaging is complete and our biological inventories are comprehensive.
We think we know it all.
We do. But the final takeaway from analyzing this enduring mystery perfectly encapsulates the true weight of the situation. Some things were never meant to be found, and some elements of the natural world are wildly adept at remaining hidden.
It implies a level of evasion that is almost unimaginable today.
It really does. It suggests that despite our arrogance, despite our GPS and our digital omnipresence, the wilderness still harbors biology that exists entirely outside of our immediate comprehension.
That is wild.
It means we are not the undisputed masters of observation on this planet. To accept the mathematical and anatomical reality of the Patterson-Gimlin film is to accept that we are sharing this environment with something that has successfully evaded our supposedly inescapable gaze.
Let's take a breath and recap the incredible journey we've just been on. We started with what seemed like a typical horseback ride into the Bluff Creek wilderness in 1967.
Just a normal day.
Right. And we witnessed the disruption of the ordinary creature executing a compliant gait, featuring a mid-tarsal break and an intermembral index that fundamentally defies human biomechanics.
Which led us through decades of scrutiny.
Exactly, discovering how Hollywood's best special effects minds and our most advanced digital technologies have repeatedly failed to reverse engineer the fluid muscle mass captured on that analog film.
And let's not forget the silence.
Yes, we examined the massive logical void created by the total lack of verifiable physical evidence for a hoax. And finally, we arrived at that humbling existential realization. If it wasn't a hoax, then our biological maps are incredibly incomplete.
It is an extraordinary convergence of biology, technology, and psychology. And for you listening right now, it's worth recognizing how incredibly rare an anomaly like this truly is.
Definitely.
We live in an era of constant, overwhelming information overload. Everything is fact-checked, debunked, or explained away in a matter of hours. To encounter a true, uncrackable piece of evidence, one that actively resists and respects no technological advancement, is a jarring reminder of the boundaries of our own knowledge.
It completely shatters the illusion of total control. And it brings me back to the very first thing we talked about today, the idea of a secret perfectly kept by time.
Yeah.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over long after we wrap up this deep dive. Think about this. If a fleeting 59-second event captured on a rudimentary Singy Kodak camera in 1967 actually becomes harder to explain away as our modern forensic and digital technology gets better, does that mean our advanced scientific tools aren't actually bringing us closer to absolute certainty?
That's a great question.
What if all our incredible technological progress is really just revealing exactly how little we actually know about what shares this planet with us? Think about the complex biomechanics of a simple footstep the next time you look at a photograph and assume you know exactly what you're seeing.